Hi, my name's Shauna Fischhaber with VA Disability Group, and today I want to talk to you about filing for individual unemployability. I want to go over who individual unemployability is meant for. I want to go over the application process, and then we'll also touch on some commonly asked questions. I do want to take you through the application section by section so you are aware of what really is required in each of those sections, so you don't have any questions or wonderings about what you should or shouldn't be doing on this form. We will also touch on what happens after you file the form and what you can kind of expect going forward. I'll make sure to include all the documents that we'll be discussing down in the description box. First of all, what is IU? What is individual unemployability? Individual unemployability is an application that you can submit that would allow you to be paid at the 100% rating, even though your current conditions do not add up to a 100% scheduler rating. And the reason that you could apply for this is if you have service-connected conditions that cause you to be unable to work. You are unable to maintain substantially gainful employment because you are simply too ill. The symptoms of your service-connected conditions cause you to be unable to work. This would be an alternative to receiving a schedular 100% rating. So a schedular rating is when your conditions add up to 100%. So you're receiving the maximum VA benefits that you can simply by addition, right? All your conditions add up to that. So the monthly payout for IU and for a schedular 100% are the same amount. The biggest difference with the IU is that you can't work. You're unemployed. You're unemployable because of your service-connected conditions. If you are employed and you're applying for IU, that employment is marginal at best, meaning that you are actually earning below the national poverty level. And most likely the environment that you're working in is a protected environment. This could mean that you're working for family or a friend. This could be that they're making accommodations for you to be able to work. Maybe you set your own schedule. Maybe you're allowed to leave work whenever you need to. Maybe they have a cot set up for you in the back, so if you're just exhausted, you can rest. Maybe you are in the back room, so you do not need to interface with people at all. And these are all accommodations that are being made for you, in addition to the fact that you are still earning below the national poverty level. So let's quickly go over, is IU right for you? You might want to consider applying if you simply cannot hold down a job, if you cycle through jobs every couple of months and you have gaps between employment. That would be a good time to consider filing for IU. And again, odd jobs don't really count. You should still consider applying if you have an odd job here or there. Maybe you clear a neighbor's driveway and they throw you some money under the table. Those aren't things that you need to be concerned about. It's really demonstrating that you cannot hold down gainful employment. So in order to be eligible for IU, one of these two factors must be true. Either you have a single service-connected condition that is at least 60%, or you have two or more service-connected conditions. One of those conditions is rated at 40%, and your total overall rating is at least at 70%. So who should really consider applying? We touched on this earlier. Again, if you're out of work, if you're cycling through jobs like crazy, if you have retired, that doesn't mean you're out. You can still apply for IU. The way you would want to ask yourself this question is, if you had to return to work today, doing the same position that you used to, would you be able to complete that job with the standards that it has to the same level? And if not, is it because of your service-connected condition that you wouldn't be able to do so? So for example, let's say you were a truck driver and you have service-connected neuropathy in both of your lower extremities, and you've retired from truck driving, but because of your neuropathy, you could no longer drive those long distances. In fact, you can only barely get from your home to the grocery store and back because of your neuropathy. You might want to consider applying for IU because of that, because there's no way you could possibly return to the work that you were able to do, and it's due to that service-connected condition. If you're enrolled in the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, VRE, you might want to consider applying for IU, because one of the services that they offer is to assist disabled veterans in finding employment. It might end up being a temporary IU rating. However, at least you're being paid at a reasonable amount for the time at which you're seeking more favorable employment for yourself. Okay, one more thing that I do want to touch on that a lot of veterans aren't aware of is that you can receive IU and SSDI at the same time. Actually, oftentimes, applying for one can assist you in applying for the other. And the reason that I say that is because a lot of the evidence that is required is the same. Now, one caveat to that is if you're receiving SSDI for a condition that you are not service connected for with the VA, that's not going to help you. But if you have overlapping issues, like let's say you have a service-connected back condition and you're receiving SSDI because of your back condition, that's amazing, because you can use the same documents that helped you to obtain SSDI to help prove your IU case. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to how to apply for IU. So IU can be submitted on its own. You don't have to wait for anything else. You can just submit that. But if you want to submit a packet, it could go along with your either new claims or appeals claims. I want to go ahead and jump right into the forms that you are going to be submitting. And I want to go through each section so you know exactly the type of information that they are going to be looking for. The document that we're going to be looking at is the 21-8940. It's the Veterans Application for Increased Compensation Based on Unemployability. It is a 4-page document. So on page 1, section 1, that's Veterans Identification Information. Make sure you include your file number, should you have one. And then we can drop down to section 2. That's your disability and medical treatment. Now, as we go through each of these sections, what I want you to think about is your best possible guesses at this information. Of course, if you have pay stubs readily available, that's going to be your best option. Go ahead and pull those things. If you have your medical records, go pull those things. But if you simply don't have that information, give your best estimate on these, as well as for your figures for any monetary value. Get as close as you possibly can, but don't let not having the exact figure put you off from completing this form. So in Block 8, you're going to include any service-connected conditions that are causing you from having gainful employment. In Block 9, you will indicate if you have been under a doctor's care or hospitalized in the past 12 months. It's an easy yes or no. For dates of treatment, you could get nitty-gritty, but oftentimes we will just do from today's date to 1 year in the past in both of these sections. In Block 11, you'll want to include any doctors that have treated you pertaining to your service-connected conditions. So in Section 8, you're claiming PTSD and a back condition. You don't necessarily need to include your podiatrist. Only include the doctors that are treating you for the conditions that are listed on this form. What you'll want here, doctor's name, doctor's address. If you've been treated at a hospital in the past 12 months, include that in Block 12. Here, you'll want the name of the hospital and the address. And that's pretty much it for this section. So let's go ahead down to Section 3, Employment Statement. This is really where I want you to do your best estimates on. When you're looking at this, these questions are all very similar. They can be nuanced and differ from veteran to veteran. It's probable that all 3 of these are the same. Let's just take a look. The date your disability affected full-time employment. Did you go to part-time? That would be the date you would want to put in there. The date you last worked full-time. Can you see here? It's basically the same question worded differently. And then the date that you became too disabled to work. Let's say you did move from full-time to part-time, and then the date that you were no longer able to work part-time, you could put that there. But don't be surprised if all three of these are the same. What is the most you ever earned in 1 year? You are going to want to put your earned income only. We're not looking at inheritance. We're not looking at passive income, not your disability either. Sweat equity only. So you're going to want to put that amount here, what year it was, and what your occupation was during that year. Page 2, section 3 continued. They're asking for information about your previous employers. Now I want you to pay very close attention to this. You're going to want to list your employment, including self-employment, for the last 5 years you worked. So if you stopped working in 2010, you would be looking from 2010 back in history to 2005. We typically start with your most recent employer and work backwards in time. So going off of that same example, your employer in 2010 would go here, and then let's say you only worked there for 2 years, so then your next employer that was in 2008 would go in the next space down here. You may only have one employer on here, you might have several. The information that you will need to include on this is the employer name and their address. What type of work did you do for them? Err on the side of simplicity with your job titling. Put in the hours per week that you worked, your dates of employment. Now, time lost from illness. This box is fun because, as you can see, it's tiny and it really contains a lot of information. So here's some things I want you to consider while you're answering this question. Were you out of work for a big stretch of time? You'll want to include that. Were you consistently leaving work early? Were you consistently coming in late? Did you have to leave work to attend doctor's appointments? Those are the types of things they're looking for in this space. For example, let's say you were working full-time and your symptoms of IBS started flaring up terribly. So you started to have to go home regularly. At first it was maybe once a month, and then it was once a week, and then it was becoming daily. Think about how long was that going on, and then try and average that figure down into hours per day, hours per week, hours per month. For some veterans, it's even months. I was out of work for 6 months out of the year. So it really does look different for everybody. And later on in the form, there is a remarks section where you can get more into that if need be. And then the last piece of information they want is the highest gross earnings per month for that position. So now let's come down to page 3, section 3. You'll need to answer if you are currently serving in the reserves or National Guard. Does your service-connected disability prevent you from performing your military duties? Yes or no. So you're only answering this if you serve in the reserves or National Guard. Indicate your total earned income for the past 12 months. Again, earned income only here, sweat equity. And do your best. Maybe look back at your pay stubs. If you only worked for 6 months and you had a decreasing pay scale each month because your hours kept decreasing, try and do a little bit of math on that. Do your best if you don't have your pay stubs. If you are working, you're going to want to include your current monthly earned income here. 21A, did you leave your last job or self-employment because of your disability? You can answer yes or no here. Do you receive or expect to receive disability retirement benefits? Now this is indicating from a previous employer, not the VA. Do you receive or expect to receive workers' compensation benefits from a previous employer? Yes or no. Have you tried to obtain employment since you became too disabled to work? Yes or no. If yes, then you'll want to complete this section here with the name and date of the employer, the type of work you were applying for, and the date that you applied. Make sure that you put in your education here in section 4. And in section 24, they're asking about any other education or training that you received before you were too disabled to work. If that's the case, then you will want to include that information here, the type of education or training, when it began, when you completed it. And then in section 25A, have you had any education or training since you became too disabled to work? Yes or no? And include that information here. Now, in the remarks section, try to keep this as simple as possible here. You can go into a little bit of detail regarding if you, like, let's say you're marginally employed by a family friend, go ahead and you can include that and sort of define those parameters. I work for my friend's company. They allow me to leave whenever I need to. I set my own schedule. Sometimes I don't go in. I can call in whenever, whatever that looks like for you. But keep it short and simple, and try and tie it to the symptoms of your service-connected condition. For example, I work for my family friend at their feed store, and I can only stand a short amount of time before the symptoms of my service-connected back condition give out, and I have to go home. They make accommodations for my service-connected condition. Yeah, if you're receiving SSDI and it's for a condition that you're also applying for IU on, you could write something up in here saying that you were receiving SSDI for X condition. Please see those records supporting my claim. You would sign in block 27, date in block 28, and bada bing, you are done with this form. You can either fax it into the EIC, or you can mail it into the EIC. Another document I want to bring your attention to is the 21-4192. This is a request for employment information in connection with claim or disability benefits. This one is given to your employer to complete. It's a standard mailing. If you submit an IU to the VA, you will get one of these in the mail. If you have a family friend that employs you, and this is pretty simple, straightforward process, they're willing to do that for you, that makes it really easy, and that's wonderful. Don't let the lack of this form, the 4192, stop you from submitting your IU. In our experience, oftentimes the VA will decide this solely based on the IU application. If they request it though, obviously you need to provide that for them to the best of your ability. You've completed your application, you submitted it to the VA. What happens next? Well, it's going to go in the same docketing system as all other VA claims. Sometimes they get processed very quickly, and sometimes it takes years. I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's the reality. When you submit an IU, you will be called in for a C&P exam, just as you would for any other condition you're claiming. Keep track of what you applied for on this form. If you applied for IU for mental health and a knee condition, be prepared to go in and talk about how your mental health and your knee condition cause you to be unable to work. Those are the things that you're going to want to focus on. Remember, you're not establishing service connection. You're already service connected. Otherwise, you can't use this application. You're only trying to tie how your service connected conditions affect your employability. Okay, so can you work? Yes, you can have that marginal employment that we touched on earlier. It's protected, it's from a family member, and you're hitting that mark below the national poverty level. Aside from that, no, you wouldn't be able to be having a 40-hour-a-week job and making substantial gainful employment. You can do some marginal work, but you'll want to proceed with caution. Another question we get asked a lot is this a permanent rating? It can be. Sometimes the VA decides that it is a permanent condition and you'll never be able to work again. So it's considered you can receive IU, permanent and total. But there's no guarantee that that's what the VA is going to decide. And unless it states that on your decision letter, you could be open to a re-evaluation later on to determine if your conditions have improved to the point where you could obtain employment. If your conditions haven't improved, you'll probably stay underneath the umbrella of the program. If they have improved, there is that chance that you could be removed from the IU program, in which case your rating would just revert back to whatever it was schedularly before you applied for IU. If you were to be reduced back to your scheduler rating, the VA would notify you ahead of time. So you would know it's coming. It wouldn't be sprung on you in your check. You'd receive some sort of communication from the VA stating such. Well, that really wraps up everything that I have for you today. If you have any questions, please drop them down in the comments. We're happy to discuss that there. I'll make sure to include the documents in the description box. If this was helpful, like and subscribe. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great day.